1001 Things Everyone Should Know About African American History. Jeffrey C. Stewart. Introduction. I can do no better than my colleague, John A. Garrity, in introducing this work than to repeat what he said about his book, 1001 Things Everyone Needs to Know About American History. Garrity asserted this book, like Charles A. Beard's An Economic Interpretation of the Constitution of the United States, was an interpretation of American history. So was mine, although I am taking aim at a particular part of American history and looking more closely and intensely at African American life and experience in America. But the main point is that I have presented here what I believe is the most important and compelling about the African American experience in America, and not what others might select either before or after reading this book. Quite frankly, there is so much to know about African Americans that it would be quite impossible to provide everything truly exhaustive in one volume, such as this, especially with such a numerical limit. At the same time, I have tried to be comprehensive rather than idiosyncratic in these topics that I have chosen to explore here. My book is designed to inform as well as to entertain and to provide those completely unfamiliar with the topic something they can rely upon. While I do not think that these books are substitutes for textbooks in the field, I do believe that this book is an excellent supplement to textbooks and other materials used in high school and college courses. One of the things I discovered in working on this book is how contemporary academic books omit the kind of details that students and I am interested in finding out, such as when something occurred. I hope, therefore, that the book will be a useful reference work as well as a diverting one. Actually, this book vibrates with the long tradition in African American history of providing popular histories to a select audience, a tradition that is perhaps most associated with the work of Joel Rogers, whose world's Great Men of Color is a classic. Here, however, I have extended considerable effort to overcome an obvious bias of such a work by including the innumerable women who have not only been great, but enormously influential in African American political, social, and cultural affairs. Another popular book form of African American historicizing is the books and articles that documents the first Black person to achieve a distinction. Although denigrated in proving often to an imaginary and skeptical audience that Blacks have achieved, accomplished, or entered some activity historically associated with whites, given the history of racism being the first inside some restrictive arena has been important. But in this book, with the exception of sports where racial barriers have been the stuff of American sports, I have tried to avoid overloading readers of this volume with the first Black persons and to focus a bit more on the social process involved. Similarly, in the section of inventions, I am just as interested in the process of invention as the inventor himself or herself. This is especially true in the first section, Great Migrations, which perhaps suggests that migration is a governing metaphor, a trope, as my colleague Arnold Rampersad would put it, for the African American experience as a whole. One word on nomenclature is appropriate. In this work, as in other works of mine, I have used African American to designate Americans of African descent wherever possible and have capitalized Black because it refers to an ethnic group such as Jewish, Chicano, Puerto Rican, etc. White is not capitalized because it does not refer to such an ethnic group. Finally, I also believe, again, like Garrity, but perhaps for different reasons, that readers may find this book inspiring. It documents more than 300 years of change and struggle in African American life that comprises one of the great stories in American history. Acknowledgements. Finally, I would like to thank Marie Brown, Rob Robertson, Kelly Ryan, Maureen Mineham, Nancy Craig, Melinda Williams, Stephanie Tilden, Deborah Richardson, Betsy Rowe, Larry Hunter, Denise Hawkins, Richard Long, Karen Wasansky, Richard Korn, Kathy Ward, Faith Davis Ruffins, Suzanne Smith, Barbara and Nicholas Nattinson, Elizabeth Turner, Martha Jackson Jarvis, Jarvis Grant, Beverly Brannon, Rita Waldron, Mary Lou Holtgren, Ann Stetzer, Kelly Bronson, Dorothy Doe, Annie Rose, Richard Powell, Anthony Ruiz, Lawrence Jones, Tom Richards, Jamesetta Varela, Faye Acker, Shirley Tilden, Reginald Clark, David Potter, Jark and Renate Rise, Marianne Deshmukh, Portia James, and most of all, my wife, Marta Reed Stewart, for help and support on this project.